Hello everyone, this is Shadow Dragon back with some more Pokemon Go Legendary Raids. I actually haven't been able to do too much on Groudon this time around. I actually thought it was going to be a series just like the others, but weather has pretty much kept me from doing these as much as I wanted to. I've only been out to Manhattan, I think, 3 times during this period. The only one I ever caught was the one you saw in my initial video. There was another trip to Manhattan that didn't have any legendaries, and I think there was one that had only one, and it's the footage you see here. This is probably the only Groudon that I actually missed. Like, of all the legendaries so far, I think he's the easiest to capture, at least to stay in the ball, and I'm not sure why. I think it could have been a mistake in their programming, because a lot of people have reported that. If you watch other YouTubers, especially Reversal, I think he only missed like 1 or 2, and he did like, I don't know, I think he did like 50, or he did like a lot of them, and he was able to capture them. And also, besides the weather, I would say the holidays also had something to do with it, because there were obviously family obligations going on, and a lot of dinners and meetups with friends. So December and the beginning of January it's a tough period to get out there, and of course this is the first year we're doing this, so it'll sort of give us a preview of years to come if Pokemon Go keeps this type of schedule. I think they're eventually going to run out of legendaries though, because I've looked at the list, and if they're going to do a generation per year, they're certainly not going to have 12 legendaries for every year, so it'll be interesting to see what they come up with. Like, if you look at the earlier generations, like they did, like, you know, the releases, and then they put the legendaries at the end, because I guess this is the first year of raids, so that's kind of what you would expect. Like, we had Gen 1, Gen 2, and then we had the Gen 1 legendaries, and then we had the Gen 2 legendaries. And here we're getting Gen 3 at the same time as like the regular Pokemon releases. I mean, I imagine they're going to have to rotate the other ones back in just for new players that haven't had the opportunity to catch them, because it would be kind of weird if they were limited in that way. Like, I can't imagine a game doing that. And it would also be interesting because, like, we're getting new counters each time. So you see, like, the websites covering this have to update their raid boss counters, and they've been doing that with both the Gen 3 regulars and the legendaries that we do have now. And the other thing is, I wonder if they're going to buff these fights a year in, because we're also going to have a lot stronger Pokemon, especially since we have armies of legendaries now. So, like, for example, if they released the birds again, previously we were using, you know, Golem, Rhydon, Tyranitar. So now we're going to have a whole bunch of Groudons to use. So, 1, it's going to be easier, and 2, it's also going to be less interesting, because if you enter the lobby and then 20 people are using Groudon, that's not going to look very diverse. So it should be interesting to see if they add to the challenge of it as well. Now, if they do go back and rotate them, they certainly will have enough each year for the 12 months, and that's including overlaps, and if they want to, like, group some of them together. Yeah, as a casual player, I actually prefer them one at a time, because that way I only have to worry about, like, one raid party, or one base raid party. But it gets a little more complex, because, like, when we had the 3 birds at a time, you actually had to have a lot of different Pokemon ready. Whereas, like, right now we have Kyogre, so we just have to have the water counters ready, which is pretty simple, and you don't really have to think about it too much. And also, if you're not like high level and super maxed out, um, you can concentrate on powering up like a handful. Whereas like if you had to face like 3 different ones randomly, you basically have to, you know, power up 3 times more. Alright, so back to the footage here. This is probably the longest like capture sequence I have of Groudon because it's the one I missed. So obviously I went through all the balls. But previously, like all the ones I caught, it was like pretty early on, like first ball. Like maybe the longest one could have been the 6th ball. But he just happened to stay in compared to the others. But yeah, this was also the last footage I have of Groudon, because the ones I did towards the end of the run, they were all local and it was like super cold. It was below freezing. You know, normally the weather doesn't bother me, but like again, raids being new this year, my right hand is uncovered, and that makes like a huge difference. Like I could pretty much only go a few blocks before I start feeling like frostbite kicking in. So there is like a physical limitation to this. I have tried a stylus, and it really doesn't have the same feel. You need to be able to touch the phone screen, and you don't want to risk anything when you're trying to do these legendary captures. So yeah, the stylus, I don't know. I guess some people are used to it. I've also heard of the gloves that go through, that allow the electrodes in your finger to go through the glove and work with the phone, but again, others have said that the feel is different. So like when it comes to the capture sequence, you're going to be taking off the glove anyway, just because you don't want to risk anything. So it's really tough. I couldn't do what I did with the other legendaries, where I went to Manhattan and did like 3 or 4 in a row. I'd pretty much have to find a coffee shop in between each one if I ever did that during the winter. Alright, so we're transitioning over to Kyogre now, and to this date I've only done 1 of them. This is the 2nd day of the release. The first day was like an overlap with Groudon. And this was also local, but it was a pretty long walk, so again, like bad weather, cold weather. A lot of people locally are doing this in cars, so they're unaffected, but there are also a bunch on foot. So the ones on foot will typically do 1 and then go back home. And if there happens to be a break and another one nearby, we'll see them again, but I think typically the ones on foot are just doing pretty much 1 and then taking a long break. Yeah, this was the only one I was able to do so far. And we did have 15 people here. It was at an apartment building, and we had some people from the raid group inside the apartment, so that was pretty cool. It's a building where I usually don't see other players in, and that's sometimes surprising because, you know, we have a lot of multi-level apartment buildings here, so sometimes, like during the summer, you'll walk there and be the only one on the street, but then when you enter a raid, you'll see like 10 people in because of the elevation. And this was also a pretty long raid battle. It seems like Kyogre has a lot of defense, because we had like a lot in this group, and it's taking a lot to take him down even. Like with other legendaries, this size of group, like I would probably go 2 or 3 Pokemon in, but I think this one I went through the whole lineup. Yeah, it did. And if you go back, you'll see how fast the first one went down, and that was my perfect ride. He typically leads off a lot of these newer raid bosses because his CP is the highest. But at least with Kyogre, he's a water type, so I don't have to swap in my first team. The bench is actually good enough because it's a whole bunch of it's just going to be Raikou. Now, out of all of my Raikou, I only have 2 that are powered up, like the 100%, and my second best is a 9-3. But all the others, I did change out the moves to at least Thundershock. I don't have enough charge TMs to change out their fast move yet, the charge move yet. But I'm kind of going in order of CP, powering them up. Okay, so now we're gonna go into the capture sequence, and this is kind of a news item too, because he's the hardest of the legendaries to capture, and a lot of people have been having trouble with this. He's probably most similar to Zapdos, I'm thinking, but no, his attack seems to be slower, and he's moving side to side like much of the other flyers. Also, like a weird robotic sound effect. And he's really far away, as you can see. I'm throwing a long ball and still missing. And I have a lot of trouble capturing the flyers that move side to side. Like, I still need practice on it, but I basically have 3 types of throws. If he's all the way to the left, it's almost a vertical spin, similar to what I was doing with Ho-Oh, but like a much longer throw. If he's in the middle, it's just a regular curveball. If he's all the way on the right, then I do a reverse of the curveball. So like normally I'm spinning it counterclockwise, so if he's on the right, I'll spin it clockwise. But I'm gonna need a lot of practice on this one. Oh, the other interesting thing about this raid month I should mention is that since Kyogre is a water type, he's going to be weather boosted by rain. So it should be interesting to see how we raid, because we're pretty much going to want the rain to come in order to raid, because that way we get the 5-level boost on it. So, I mean, I imagine Manhattan is still going to be pretty easy to fill up, because weather doesn't affect at least the Midtown strip that I take. So yeah, that's different than the others, because Groudon and Ho, when we first had the weather boost, they both were boosted during good weather, like clear and sunny. So this one is the first bad weather in rain. Yeah, so this one got away, and I have yet to get a Kyogre. But we'll see how things progress as we go through January. So stay tuned, and thanks for watching.